Hey, it's Doug with Backcountry Pilgrim. I have been a pretty big fan of Durston Gear from the very beginning. The first piece of gear that I got that was designed by Dan Durston was the Drop.com early backpack. Now, that pack did not fit me quite right, so I ended up not being able to use it, but I really appreciated Dan's innovative approach to gear. I kept up with him, and when the Kakwa backpack came out, I got it. When the new X-Mid Pro came out, I got it. And I recently picked up the X-Mid Pro one-person tent. Now, as I have said in other videos, I do have a bit of claustrophobia. I do not like tight, confined places, and even though I have survived a night in a bivvy, I wasn't totally sure if I was ready to jump into a one-person tent. Now, I have used them before, but I had heard really good things about the X-Mid Pro 1's size, and given the lower weight and smaller footprint, I thought it might be worth checking out for my ultra light loadouts. Now, to drop the weight even lower, I decided to swap out the trekking poles I usually use for the Z-Flix tent poles made by Durston Gear. These are basically trekking pole replacements, so while they add to your base weight because you're not carrying them in your hands, they're so lightweight, it seemed it would be worth it. To round off my full Durston Gear shelter, I picked up some DAC J Stakes, and then I got some Dyneema Ironwire. This is super lightweight, super strong cordage that, to be honest, is overkill for the X-Mid tent, but hey, like they say at Mythbusters, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Now, admittedly, this full Durston Gear loadout is not cheap. All in, this setup is going to come to about $725. However, this full comfort shelter comes in at under 28 ounces. That is considerably less than 2 pounds, and that's including the poles. My Bug Bivvy tarp shelter weighs nearly that much without any poles at all. I want to see if the X-Mid Pro 1 is as easy to pitch as the X-Mid Pro 2. I want to see how it works out with the Z-Flix poles and test out the DAC J Stakes and the Dyneema Ironwire. So let's hit the trail and see how it goes. Durston Gear's X-Mid Pro 1 is a Dyneema trekking pole tent, a hybrid construction where the inner and the fly are actually sewn together rather than being kept in two pieces like most double wall tents. What this means is that the sides of the tent are a double wall, meaning that you have a bug net and then you have that covered with the rain fly. However, that inner is sewn at the top, and so the ends and the roof of the tent are single wall. This saves weight and remains 100% bug-proof. The downsides to this construction are that condensation can be a little bit bigger of an issue than a standard double wall tent, and you don't have the ability to use the fly and the inner separately for things like stargazing. If that is your interest, you can always get the regular X-Mid. Also keep in mind that Dyneema is fairly see-through, so it is going to be bright inside when the sun is out, and see-through from the outside when the moon is out. There are two different versions of the Pro one-person tent, and they differ by the kind of floor you get. What you might call the standard floor is a 15 denier, sil nylon, polyurethane coated, woven floor, which is better for abrasion and packing smaller. However, it does not provide as good a protection against tearing, and it is 2 ounces heavier. The Dyneema floor is quieter, and it has a thicker outer layer only on the underside, which makes its durability similar to the more common 1-ounce Dyneema floors while being lighter and packing smaller. The Dyneema fabric of the X-Mid Pro 1 is hot bonded using a special heat-activated adhesive that is stronger and much more temperature stable than regular adhesive tape. The geometry of the tent is very strong and optimized to shed snow and deal with strong winds. One of the things I really love about the entire X-Mid series is the ease of pitching the tent. It only requires 4 tent stakes, although 6 will make it a little easier to deal with so that the vestibule doors are being pulled out, and there are connections to put in 6 more beyond that if you feel the need. All you do is stake the tent down in a rectangle and then insert the poles. You can do this by opening up the vestibule and going in from the bottom, or you can open up the peak vents and drop the pole in from the top. You simply extend the poles and the tent is pitched. Now, this does not mean that there are not better and worse pitches, and it should be noted that if you don't get the pitch right on the first try, you are not going to be able to simply adjust the tent stakes to get it right. You're pretty much going to have to start over getting that initial rectangle correct. However, even an imperfect pitch will keep you warm and dry, and that's really the point of the tent. One of the things that made me interested in the XMID Pro 1 is its size. Despite being a one-person tent, it is 90 inches long up to the 15-inch mark on the sides. It's 32 inches wide, so it easily accommodates even the widest of sleeping pads with room left over, and it has a peak height of 45 inches. The offset geometry of the tent makes it feel even roomier, and because of its layout, you can fit a person up to 6 foot 8 inches tall in a sleeping bag with 3 inches of loft, and still have 3 or 4 inches of clearance at both ends, without touching the sides of the tent. I found the inside to be comfortable and not at all claustrophobic. Being able to easily sit up inside the tent, reach above my head whether I was lying down or sitting up, made me feel like I was in a decent space, and like my hiking buddy Discord pointed out, the only time you're going to be using this tent is with an ultralight loadout anyway, and by the time you get set up, there shouldn't be enough left in your backpack to not fit in the tent. So given that the weight of the XMID Pro 1 is under 1 pound, and that it provides plenty of room, both for a person who has claustrophobia issues, with enough space left over to store some ultralight gear inside, I am very happy with it. Now, added to that are 2 vestibules that come in at 22 square feet. And because of the geometry of the tent, the widest area is beside each doorway. That's right, you have 2 doors on this tent, even though it is a one-person model. It has dual interior pockets, which means you are going to have places to put your stuff, even though you're not going to be able to fit a packed backpack inside. Like the XMID Pro 2, the XMID Pro 1 has magnetic door toggles, which makes it a lot easier for rolling up the vestibule flaps. The zippers are high-quality YKK single-handed operating zippers. On the fly, you have a number 3 Aqua Guard that is waterproof, and a regular version for the inner doors. These zippers make it easy to get in and out of the tent, and this ease of entrance and exit is heightened by the fact that the structural poles are not in the way of the door. It has dual peak vents, so although it is a Dyneema tent and partially single wall, you can actually get some decent airflow in the tent even with the vestibules zipped down. Now, as to the condensation issue, I have pitched the XMID Pro at the beach and in the Sierras. Sometimes the condensation was an issue and sometimes it was not. Now, part of what made this loadout under 28 ounces are the poles that I used for the tent. Now, I've got pretty good carbon trekking poles, and they still come in at around £1 pound each. I swapped these out for the Durston Gear Z-Flix tent poles. These are collapsible tent poles that are also extendable, and they weigh only 3.3 ounces each. Z-Flix are the world's lightest adjustable poles, and as far as I know, they are the only folding pole with an external continuous adjuster. This is the same kind of adjustment mechanism that you typically see on trekking poles. They will work for any trekking pole tent with a peak between 43.5 and 51.5 inches. Importantly, the Z-Flix poles have different tips. One of them is rounded and the other has a sharper tip. Thus, they will work for both style tents. And because the Z-Flix poles collapse into 5 sections, they are only 12 inches long when packed. So for people that don't want to carry trekking poles at all, or who maybe only like to hike with one trekking pole, or for those who use their trekking poles for a chair or something at camp, the Z-Flix poles make an excellent super ultralight addition to a shelter loadout. Now, as with all trekking pole tents, because the geometry of the tent is being supported by the tension created between the tent pole and the tent stake. Having good stakes is very important. Now, Durston Gear has a package of stakes that they recommend. They're made by the DAC company, and although they look more U-shaped, they are called J Stakes. DAC's proprietary alloy is more than 3 times stronger than the most common stake material. They are lighter than most Y-shaped stakes and stronger than many hook stakes. They get their strength from a thickened center, which increases vertical load capacity through their rigidity. This thick middle is extended to the tips, so they are stronger where they are going to be breaking through hard ground and where they are going to be hit from the top by a rock or a hammer, whereas the wings of the stake are wide and thin to aid in ease of placement, as well as keeping their position in the ground. One of the things I love about these stakes is that, unlike pretty much any other, they stack together very efficiently and they take up less room. Now, there is an interesting debate about how these kinds of stakes are supposed to be placed, whether the U-shape should be pointed toward the tent or away from it. If you have an opinion, please put it in the comments below. I found these to work very well. I liked how fast I could clean them off, and the fact that they stack together made them a lot easier to put away. The Durston stake package comes with 4 8-inch DAC J stakes for the corners and 4 6-inch stakes for the vestibules and additional tie-outs. All of these stakes together are only 3.3 ounces, and they only run $15. Now, the guy lines and tie-outs that come with the X-Mid Pro 1 are very good, very lightweight, but also very strong. However, if you really want to beef up your shelter, the preferred cordage that comes from the Durston Gear website is known as Ironwire. This is a 2mm Dyneema weave that is extremely abrasion resistant and uses a hybrid weave on the sheath so that it is not too slick to hold knots well. Not only is pure Dyneema sometimes too slick to hold knots very well, it doesn't melt nicely to finish off the ends when it's cut. So, the Durston version of the Ironwire uses a hybrid Dyneema and polyester sheath over cordage that is incredibly strong, with a breaking strength of 650 pounds. It reduces stretch from the typical 10% down to 1%. It sheds water nicely, and it has 3M Scotchlite reflective tracer along the sheath so that it is very easy to see at night. Now, 50 feet of this 2mm Ironwire is only 2.1 ounces and comes in at $22.75. All in all, I found the setup to be very simple, the quality to be unparalleled, the features to be quite welcome, and the overall shelter is so lightweight. This Durston Gear setup has become my new go-to ultralight shelter system. So overall, I am super impressed with the Durston Gear X-Mid 1, so much so that I actually sold my X-Mid Pro 2, because I think it is going to do just about as good of a job in the kinds of situations that I would normally want the X-Mid Pro 2 in. However, with the smaller footprint and the lighter weight, I can't really see myself picking the X-Mid 2 over it. If I need a 2-person tent, I have a good one. If I'm going to be going full luxury, I don't mind carrying a little bit of extra weight, but I might as well have some of the more luxurious features. So for those kinds of trips, I'm just going to stick with my Big Agnes Copper Spur UL2. But when I am in some situations where I need to go really ultralight and I may not have a really big area for the footprint of the tent, I'm definitely going to be grabbing my Durston Gear X-Mid Pro 1. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, would you mind giving it a like? Comment, let me know your UL loadout, or if you've tried 1 versus 2-person tents. I would love to hear your experience. And subscribe to Backcountry Pilgrim if you're into hiking, camping, backpacking, and the gear that goes with it. Until next time, I'm Doug. Thanks for watching.